Hello, everyone. My name is Gary Baumgarten, but I expect you already know that. And I welcome you to this discussion on Facebook Live, on paltalk.com, and on YouTube. Well, joining me is a guy who knows all of the above because I'm branding him as the RV guru, but he's also the social media guru. He's actually a former colleague. We actually worked at the Detroit News together. And then he left print for broadcast. He went over to WDIV, Channel 4 in Detroit. And I went over to WWJ, the all news radio station, but our careers paralleled. And then he kind of retired, but he's not retiring by any stretch of the imagination, because Mike and his beautiful wife, Jennifer, have taken one of their passions, and that's RVing, and they've turned it into a cottage industry. And he's all over. I mean, if you go on to YouTube, if you go on Facebook, if you go on to the internet and go to rvlifestyle.com, you cannot escape Mike and Jennifer, and they've actually become the source, the place to go if you're interested in RVing. So now, since many of you know, I got a conversion van. By the way, Mike, they told me I had to name the van, and I went, no way am I going to name the van. And then people said, well, it'll come to you, and it did. I named it the Van Go.
The Van Go.
Yes, because I'm in radio, and I'm always asking people to lend me their ears.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah,
that's very good. I have a friend who has a white one, and they call theirs Vanna White.
Oh, Vanna White.
A white van. Yeah.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
Mike Wendland, welcome to this discussion on Facebook Live, paltalk.com, and on YouTube.
Great to be here, Gary. Great to be here.
Great to have you. So the reason I asked you to join me is because RV sales, because of the pandemic, are like off the books, man. You can't, people are like buying them like hotcakes. Nobody's booking any excursions to Alaska or to Europe right now. So they're staying closer to home. And a lot of people are taking that money and putting it into the RV lifestyle.
It's insane. I mean, they are actually buying sight unseen, 100,000, 150,000, even more. Some of these brand new RVs, they're buying them sight unseen in many cases. And the dealers, they're just driving them to their driveway and off they go. They're renting them. RV rentals have gone through the roof. They're borrowing them from friends. And as a result, the vacation that everybody is taking this year is in an RV. And that's brought all sorts of issues, good and bad, but it's phenomenal how many people have decided, well, we aren't going to go to Europe. We're not going to take a cruise. We're not going to be in an airplane. We don't want to stay in hotels. We want to do some social distancing. So I just printed up, Gary, some face masks that say the RV lifestyle is social distancing, so I'm going to get those and wear those for our face masks. But it's incredible how it's going.
Yes, and that's exactly right. I love the fact that I can take my conversion van now. Mine's not really an RV, but still it has some of the amenities that you're used to. And I could go out somewhere, and I could be alone, or I could be with even a group of people, but we're socially distant. I cook my own food. I'm self-contained. I don't have to worry about, like you say, getting onto a crowded airplane and worrying about the person behind me sneezing on me or something with the COVID around. And, at my age, and I'm sure at your age, that's a concern. We're considered high risk.
Yeah, we are high risk. I mean, we're just, it is out there. As much as we try to ignore it, there's no getting around the fact that you got to be a little more careful than normal. But it's such a great lifestyle. I mean, I had no idea that we just were going out to have some fun, and I started a blog, and some friends in the media gave it some attention, and like it just exploded. And now we've got books and videos and everything. But the thing remains that we're still out there. We're travel about 3/4 to half the time. And this is a year that I am just amazed. Every place you go, campgrounds are crowded. You can hardly get in some of them. We do a type of camping called boondocking, which is basically off the grid, and usually in places where dispersed camping is allowed. It's on federal land or state land, Bureau of Land Management property out west. And normally when we go to these places, there's nobody around, and it's like those idyllic photos you see of RVing. But this year, That's been discovered, and people are camping out in the wilderness like crazy, and it's harder and harder to find a campground. We're hoping it'll get a little better now that some people at least are going back to school, or kids are in their homes online learning, and that maybe that'll stop some of the travel. But it's been an incredible year for RV dealers. They have sold out inventory. As I said, customers are buying stuff without even seeing them. I have a couple friends who are in the manufacturing end of them, and the wait time for a new one that you order from the factory is 12 to 16 months. That's how long before they'll get it delivered. That's how many people are buying them. It's just it's a truly a seller's market these days, and there's no shortage of buyers.
So, as you know better than I know a little bit because I've researched this for several years before I made the decision to buy what I bought. I considered an RV. I ended up with a conversion van. There's a little bit of a difference, nuance that you and I understand. Not everybody might know, but you can't just get an RV sight unseen, get behind the wheel, start it up, and go. There's a lot to know about the intricacies of a recreational vehicle.
Well, depending, of course, what you get, the van that you have, and the one step up from that, which is a Class B van, the old camper van they call them. Those are pretty simple. Those are just like driving around in a SUV, a smaller. It doesn't even have to be a big SUV. Even a minivan drives much like them. When you get up into the larger motor homes, it becomes a little bit more of a challenge. When you're towing a trailer, or in a truck pulling a fifth wheel, which is a trailer that kind of mounts on the rear back of a pickup, then it gets a little more tricky. Or if you get one of those great big Class A motor coaches that are 43 feet long, and then you're towing a car behind it, which makes them as long as the semi-tractor truck on the road. And if you haven't done a little practicing and had somebody give you some instructions, those can be kind of hairy. But for the smaller ones, they're pretty easy.
But on the inside, is what I was thinking about. But you bring up an excellent point about the driving. But on the inside of the unit, you have to know how to turn the heat on, how to turn it off, how to make the refrigerator run on I don't know, propane battery and electricity, how to switch from shore power to. I mean, there's a lot of stuff. Oh, and of course, the one that nobody wants to think about is how to dump the tank after you use the necessary room.
Yeah, that's the part that they don't do any training on. There are some intricacies. I don't think they're that. I'm about the most unmechanical person in the world, and I had there was a slight learning curve, but I know we bought our used RV when we first started off. We've been doing this now about 10 years, and the day after we bought it, we drove to Florida, and I kind of learned on the road, but. It's a matter of flipping some switches, and some of them in the right order. But there's so much help out there. There's just so much. We have a Facebook group we started for our followers. It's got our Facebook page is like 410,000 people, and our group has 41,000 people who are helping everybody out. So there's lots of help online now, and I don't want to tell people that it's too hard to use, but I do think you need to watch some YouTube videos, go to a campground before you buy, walk around. People are delighted to show you their RVs, ask them how things work and what they wish they knew then that they know now. So in that sense, you're absolutely right. You just don't want to get in and take off with no idea at all what you're getting into.
Well, it's been my experience, whether it's just camping or with a group of people who are RVing in a more modernized setting. You can't find a nicer group of people. Everybody seems to be very approachable.
Yeah, we just came back. We were out camping most of last week, and we are how screwed up this country is, and how divisive everything is, and how even here at Facebook you can't write anything without people going. Unless you're an RVer, RVers kind of put aside all of those differences because they're there among them too, but they focus on what we all agree on, and that is a love of nature and the camaraderie that comes from the road. And it is a really nice, helpful group of people. But on the other hand, there's so many new people coming in now that are unaware of any of the customs or the etiquette or the kind of the unwritten rules of camping, and they are creating a lot of problems out there.
I was just going to go so that's a perfect segue into that, because as you mentioned at the beginning of our discussion, Mike Wendland from RVlifestyle.com, uh, the campgrounds are full. You better have a reservation almost these days if you want to go to a KOA or something like that. And maybe even with some of the state campgrounds, you may need a reservation these days. So this has caused a little bit of friction maybe between people who are longtime campers or RVers and the new crowd. And in fact, we haven't gotten into this, but there's a whole subsect of all this. People who live full time in their vans or in their RVs, and they are commonly called nomads. And a lot of them, I learned from your reporting, are giving up the ghost. They've been on the road for 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years. And now, because of all this competition for a space to park for the night, a lot of them are saying, okay, we're going to scale it back.
Yeah, and some of that's natural. Sometimes, you've kind of been there, done that thing. Although I think there's so much to do with RVing, I don't know how you'll ever get all of that done. There's about 1 million what we call full timers, the nomads you talk about a million who live and work on the road. Some of them are retired. A lot of them are younger people who are foregoing families. Some of them are road schooling their kids, homeschooling or RV schooling them. But there's about 1 million of them, which is a lot. But there's about 10 to 11 million RVers out there. And most of them are recreational users. They may be heavy users. They may, travel out there a lot on vacations in summer, but they still have what we call a sticks and bricks home where we all come back to. The full-timers have just reported nothing but problems in many of the areas because they can't get in. I talked to somebody just yesterday who was on their way up to Montana, and they were coming up. They lived in Texas, and they were going straight up, and they went through Kansas, figuring, well, we'll spend right as soon as we crossed over the Oklahoma border into Kansas, we'll spend the night. And they got to the place they've always stayed before. It was booked up. They went a couple of miles down the road. They went all the way north across Kansas, and not until they got into Nebraska could they find a place to stay. And it was like 2 a.m. And that's how crowded it was. The other thing they're doing is I mentioned boondocking, where you can go out and you can camp for free or for very little in federal land, state land. Those sites, they don't have toilets. They don't have water hookups. You are to be self-contained and have everything with you in your RV. And so what's happening is so many of these people who've never gone out there, they're emptying their gray tanks, which is your dirty water, your dishwater and your shower water, and their black tanks where the solids go and the stuff that we don't want to have to empty. They're emptying that in the middle of the wilderness. So in Oregon, in Utah, in California, in Arizona, federal government, state government are shutting down many of these once open campgrounds because so many people are trashing it. They're finding human waste and diapers and toilet paper and garbage that are just being left behind by obviously new people who've never lived that lifestyle before. That's so disturbing to most RVers who really love and respect the wilderness. There's a unwritten rule of leave no trace behind, and most RVers follow that really well. But this sudden influx of so many people who've never done it before is causing issues, and crowded campgrounds, and then waste and not treating the natural resources right.
Yeah, well, when I was in the Boy Scouts, we were always taught to leave the campsite in better condition than we found it, not even without a trace. It was just pounded into us that when you're there, you make an improvement before you leave, whatever it might be. Maybe it's fixing a bridge, a little footbridge across the creek, and whatever it takes. That was part of our creed in our Boy Scout troop, and I think maybe it's going to be up to those of us who are responsible to, I don't know, bring extra trash bags with us and police the area, because otherwise, if they keep closing them down because of the the miscreants among us, it's going to affect all of us.
Yeah, it is. And there are a lot of people who want to get into RVing and are unable to buy one or rent one. I'm telling them all, just wait until next spring, next summer. There's going to be a glut of used RVs on the market from people who wanted to get one and couldn't buy one. And so they just bought whatever they could find in the meantime. And they don't really like it that much, or they got their vacation and they're going to be putting those up. So there's going to be a lot of good bargains, I think, next spring, next summer. But the meantime, the issue is all of them need, as they buy these RVs, to be given some instruction and about what is proper and what isn't proper. Most people are fine, and I don't mean to paint a broad brush here, but there are some problems that we've never seen before because of COVID. And then there have been places during COVID where RVers have not been very welcome, in small communities early on during the initial stages and the lockdown, when it sounded like every other person was going to be dropping dead of this thing. I heard from other RVers on the road who were, because the full timers, this is their home, and they're trying to get to a campground someplace to hunker down for it. And they go to these communities and they're told, go home. We don't want you here. And the rationale is, we don't have enough resources in our hospital to handle our local population. We can't have visitors coming in. And others were told, stay out of our grocery stores. They're already taking all the stuff. People are buying extra, and there's not enough for the community itself, and we can't have outsiders coming in. That's all pretty much gone by the wayside now. But still, the Canadian-U.S. border is closed.
I know. I want to do. There's a guy I watch. I don't know if you follow him. He actually started out as a city life guy, and he was living in the city with in his van with his dog, and now he's gone out into the wilderness. Hasn't changed the name of his channel, but oh my God, I've never seen something. You go out to British Columbia; it's the most spectacular place you could think of going, in close proximity to you and me. So that's on my bucket list. Mike Wendland, I appreciate you spending this time. I know you're very busy. You're doing a lot of these. It's rvlifestyle.com, folks. Whether you're in the lifestyle or thinking about the lifestyle, you have to research before you do it. And the jump off spot for this is Mike's website and the books, the videos, the podcasts, everything that he produces is right there. And most of it's free. And the stuff that isn't is very affordable.
All right. Hey, Gary, it's great. Let's go camping. So
let's do it.
Holler when you get to, we're going to UP in a couple of weeks. So come up there.
Well, I'm going to be in Michigan in a few weeks. So I'll reach out to you and maybe we can at least have a soda pop together.
I'd like that. Thank you, Gary, very much.
Thank you. And as I say to everyone at the end of our little get-togethers, please stay safe and peace out.